Then came Sebastian's turn. He gripped the microphone stand like it was a life raft. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and out came a voice that was pure, crystalline, and hauntingly precise. It was a classical tenor, perfectly on pitch, every syllable enunciated with surgical beauty. Theodore stopped pacing. He turned to look at Sebastian, his mouth slightly open. "Theodore, holy, he sounds like an angel, a very stiff, very angry angel. The contrast, our voices, they actually fit together, like gears. I want to stand closer, I need to hear him better." As the song reached its crescendo, they stopped looking at the lyrics screen. They turned toward each other, in them of the hall. With the 85% affection box over Julian's head flickering in my peripheral vision, I watched my two rivals achieve the unexpected turn I had been dreading and hoping for. They hit the final high note together, their voices blending in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. The room went silent. They were standing inches apart, microphones lowered, breathing the same air. System notification, Singsi level 100%, romance gauge, 60%. Warning, mission friendship has failed. Mission soulmates is auto-loading. I didn't know you could do that. Theodore whispered into the silence. "You're flat on the bridge," Sebastian replied, but he was smiling. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "But your energy was adequate." "Adequate? I'll give you adequate." Theodore laughed, and for the first time, he didn't sound like he was trying to win a fight. He sounded like he was found. "Boss's twist." Felt a hand on my shoulder. Julian was standing there, his face shadowed. "They're going to be fine, Arthur," he said softly. "You achieved your goal. They won't quit because of a girl. They'll probably never leave each other's side again." I looked at them. Sebastian and Theodore were now sitting at a table in the corner, sharing a single bowl of pretzels and talking animatedly about music theory. Lyra was at the bar, flirting with a handsome forest ranger. The company was safe. "Then why do I feel like I've lost control of the script?" I asked. "Because you were so busy writing theirs that you forgot you're in the story too," Julian said. He leaned in, his glasses slipping slightly down his nose. "He's so oblivious. He's saved the world. But he hasn't saved himself. I want to take him away from this loud room. I want to tell him that I don't care about the company as much as I care about the person running it." Julian reached out and took the wine glass from my shaking hand. His fingers lingered on mine. "Arthur," he said, his voice dropping to a register I'd never heard before, low, intimate, and possessive. "The audit isn't over, and I think it's time we discussed your personal investments." My heart hammered. I realized then that while I was playing matchmaker for the twin pillars, I had accidentally created a vacuum in my own life, one that Julian was more than happy to fill. "My office," I managed to breathe out. "The balcony," corrected, guiding me toward the glass doors. "The stars are better." System, sidebill path activate. Current status. The boss is no longer in charge. As we stepped out into the cool night air, I heard one last thought from Julian before I let the sensory link fade into the background. "Julian, finally, I've waited a year, no, 5 years for this. I'm not letting him reset the clock again." Chapter 5, The Static in the System. The morning after the karaoke meltdown, as I had taken to calling it, the office atmosphere had shifted from a battlefield to something far more dangerous, a laboratory of unspoken questions. I sat in my office, staring at a monitor that displayed the company's quarterly projections, but my eyes kept drifting to the blue, translucent screen floating in the center of the room. System status, plot divergence 110%. Male lead 1, Sebastian, and male lead 2, Theodore, have entered the lingering phase. The female lead, Lyra, is currently filing her nails, romance potential 0.01%. I sighed, rubbing my temples. My plan to make them stable friends had skipped a few chapters. They weren't just friends, they were an accidental power ballad, and then there was Julian. Since the balcony incident, Julian hadn't said a word about his personal investments comment. He whacked being perfect stoic PA, but every time he handed me a document, the sensory link felt like a live wire. "Julian," he's staring at the screen, but he hasn't scrolled in 10 minutes. Is he thinking about the balcony? Or is he still obsessed with the team leaders? I should have kissed him. No, that would have been a HR nightmare. But God, he looked so soft in the moonlight. I choked on my coffee. "Julian, can you call Sebastian and Theodore in? We have a fraud alert." Julian's posture straightened instantly. "The audit, sir?" "Yes, something isn't right. The crack in the foundation. In my previous life, the downfall of Apex Global started with a series of minor discrepancies in the offshore accounts frauds that were ignored because everyone was too busy watching Sebastian and Theodore scream at each other. This time, the discrepancies were appearing early. The door opened, Sebastian and Theodore walked in. They weren't fighting. In fact, they were walking in sync. Theodore was actually holding the door open for Sebastian, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a week ago. "You called for a meeting, Arthur?" Sebastian asked, taking his usual seat. He looked refreshed. His tie was slightly less restrictive, and there was a faint, relaxed curve to his mouth. "We've found something," I said, sliding a tablet across the desk. "Several million have been moved through a shell company called L-Star Holdings. It looks like internal embezzlement." Theodore leaned in, his shoulder brushing Sebastian's. In the past, Sebastian would have recoiled. Now he leaned into the touch. "Theodore, millions? Who has the balls to steal from us while we're in the room? I'll hunt them down." But wait, Sebastian's hand is right there on the table. If I move my pinky 2 inches, I can touch him. "Focus, Theo. Corporate crime. Sebastian. Embezzlement. It's coming from the logistics department. I'll need to run a full audit of the last 6 months. Theodore is breathing my neck. "It's distracting. It's wonderful." "No, it's problematic. We are in a high-stakes meeting. Stop thinking about his neck. I need you to work together on this," I said, trying to regain my role as the strategist. "Sebastian, you track the digital trail. Theodore, you use your creative connections to find out who owns L-Star. You have to be a united front. No secrets." "Consider it done," Theodore said, standing up. He looked at Sebastian. "You coming, iceberg? We've got a thief to catch." "Don't call me that," Sebastian sighed, but he stood up and followed Theodore out. System notification. New quest unlocked. Quest, the investigative duo. Objective, catch the fraudster. Reward, total company stability. The elevator, instant. An hour later, I realized I'd left my tablet in the conference room. I decided to head down to the 40th floor to retrieve it. Julian, of course, followed me. As we reached the elevator bank, we saw the doors to elevator 4 closing. Inside were Sebastian and Theodore, mid-argument about a spreadsheet. "Wait," I called out, but the doors shut. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered. A deep grinding sound echoed through the shaft. The digital display over the elevator froze. "Sir," Julian said, his voice sharp, "power to the West Wing just tripped. They're stuck." I lunged for the emergency phone, but then I stopped. A thought occurred to me. In every BL story I'd ever read or seen in the system's database, the stuck in an elevator trope was the ultimate catalyst for a confession. "Julian," I whispered, "don't call maintenance yet." "Sir?" "They are trapped in a 3x3 metal box. It's a safety hazard. It's a friendship hazard, Julian. This is the perfect environment for them to bond under pressure. Just 10 minutes. Give them 10 minutes to synergize." Julian stared at me. He's truly insane. He's using a mechanical failure to play Cupid. "But if the power is out here too?" The hallway lights completely, leaving us in the dim glow of the emergency red LEDs. The silence was heavy. "Sir," Julian's voice was right by my ear. I felt his hand find mine in the dark. "Since the elevators are down, we are also stuck in this hallway. Sensory link 100%. Julian." My heart is beating so loud he must be able to hear it. The red light makes him look like a dream. I have him alone. No tablets, no team leaders, no Lyra. If I don't say it now, I never will. "Julian," I breathed, my back hitting the cool wall. "What are you doing? I'm tired of being the shadow." "Arthur." He stepped closer, his hands pinning me against the wall, a mirror of the way Sebastian had pinned Theodore earlier. "I've watched you die in my dreams. I've watched you struggle for years. You're so busy trying to save everyone else's future. Who is saving yours?" I couldn't breathe. The system was flashing. Side quest, the assistant's confession, 99% complete. "I don't need saving," I managed to say, though my knees felt like jelly. "Yes, you do," Julian whispered. He reached up, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "You need someone who knows your coffee order, your bank passwords, and exactly how many hours of sleep you didn't get last night. You need me." He leaned in. I expected a question. Julian was a man of action. His lips met mine firm, desperate, and tasting like the mint tea he'd brought me that morning. It wasn't like the accidental touches with the others. This was an explosion. It was 5 years of repressed longing hitting me all at once. I reached up, grabbing his tie, pulling him closer. "Julian." Pure, unadulterated joy. He's kissing me back. He's actually kissing me back. I'm never letting go. To hell with the company. To hell with the audit. This is all that matters. Meanwhile, inside the elevator, the air was getting warm. Theodore had stripped off his leather jacket and was sitting on the floor. Sebastian was leaning against the corner, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. "You know," Theodore said, his voice echoing in the small space, "if we die in here, I'm glad it's with you." "We aren't going to die, Theodore. It's a standard power surge," Sebastian said, but his voice was trembling. "Still, you're not so bad when you aren't talking about margins." Theodore looked up at him. "I meant what I said at the karaoke." "Your voice, It did something to me. Sebastian looked down at him. The iceberg had completely melted. He sat down on the floor next to Theodore, their shoulders touching. "Theodore," Sebastian said softly, "I've hated you for 3 years because you're everything I'm not. You're loud, you're messy, and you're free. I thought if I fought you, I wouldn't have to admit that I wanted to be near you." Theodore smiled, reaching out to catch a stray strand of Sebastian's hair. "Well, we're each other now. What are you going to do about it?" Sebastian didn't answer with words. He grabbed Theodore's collar and pulled him into a kiss that was as sharp and precise as his legal briefs. "System notification. Mission accomplished. Romance GAO. 100%. Stability rating. Overflow error." Sebastian cleared his throat, leaning forward. As he did, Theodore's hand accidentally brushed his under the table. Sebastian didn't flinch. He leaned into it. "The funds from Elstar Holdings weren't just embezzled," Sebastian explained, his professional persona fighting for dominance. "They were used to purchase shares of Apex Global through a secondary market. Someone is trying to stage a hostile takeover from the inside. And I found the owner of Elstar," Theodore added, his voice turning serious. "The paperwork is buried under 20 layers of shell companies, but the ultimate beneficiary is a name you might recognize, Arthur." He slid a physical file across the table. I opened it. My heart stopped. The name on the document wasn't a stranger. It was Arthur's uncle, Silas Pendleton. In the previous life, Silas had been the one who helped me during the bankruptcy, acting as a grieving relative while he picked the bones of the company clean. I had never realized he was the one who started the fire in the first place. "He's been planning this for years," I whispered. "Warning. Villain awakened. Quest dated. Defend the throne. Pint. The power is not enough. You need the power of Foa." The unexpected turn. "He won't get away with it," Sebastian said, his voice regaining its icy edge. "Not with us on the case. We'll bury him in creative lawsuits and marketing scandals." Theodore grinned. I looked at them. They were a united front, not because they were friends, but because they were protecting something they both finally valued. "Julian," I said, looking at my PA. "What's our move?" Julian stepped forward, placing a hand on the back of my chair. "Julian, Silas, I always knew that man was a snake. He's the one who tried to get Arthur to fire me 3 years ago. If he wants a war, he'll get one. But Arthur looks scared. I need to remind him that he's not the same man who failed before. We initiate the Scorth Protocol," Julian said aloud. "We freeze the internal accounts and leak a false trail to Silas. Lead him into a trap. But we'll need total cooperation between operations and creative." "You have it," Sebastian and Theodore said in unison. Suddenly, Lyra looked up from her donut. "Wait, Silas Pendleton? That's the guy who gave me the recommendation for this internship. He told me he was looking out for the company's future." The room went cold. Female lead wasn't just a romantic interest. She was Silas's inside plant. She was the one who was supposed to sow discord between the team leaders, to distract them while Silas moved in for the kill. I looked at Lyra. She looked genuinely confused, her eyes wide and innocent. She didn't know she was a pawn. System. Plot twist revealed. New status. Lyra is the unwitting spy. "Lyra," I said gently, "I think it's time we had a very long talk about your uncle. The bosses but audit." Late that night, after Sebastian and Theodore had left together, in the same car I noticed, I sat in my office. The lights of London twinkled outside, but I felt the weight of the coming war. Julian walked in with a glass of water and 2 aspirin. "You have a tension headache, Arthur. I can see it in your eye." "I have a my uncle is trying to ruin my life headache, Julian." Julian walked my chair. He didn't ask. He simply placed his hands on my shoulders and began to knead the tight muscles. "Sensory link. Open. Julian, I'm going to protect him. I don't care about the system or the past life he keeps hinting at. I'm going to destroy Silas. And then, I'm going to make sure Arthur never has to worry about synergy again, because he'll have me." I leaned my head back, closing my eyes. "Julian?" "Yes, Arthur." "About the elevator and the hallway." "The audit is ongoing," Julian whispered, leaning down so his breath tickled my ear. "And so far the results are very, very promising." I smiled. My plan for friendship had failed spectacularly, but as I sat there with Julian's hands on me and my 2 best men finally working as one, I realized that maybe love was the best strategic movement I'd ever made. Chapter 8: The Gala of Deception. The plan to take down Silas Pendleton required more than just spreadsheets and legal threats. It required a spectacle. Silas was a man of ego, and nothing fed that ego more than the annual Founders Gala, a black tie event where the elite of the city gathered to toast to their own success. If we want to catch him, I said, leaning over the holographic map of the ballroom, we need to get into his private server. He carries the hardware key on him at all times. It's a gold signet ring on his left hand. It's not just jewelry, it's a high-frequency proximity key. So we need someone to get close enough to him to clone the signal. Sebastian noted, adjusting his glasses. He was standing surprisingly close to Theodore, their shoulders pinned together. Not just close, I corrected. We need a distraction. Silas is paranoid. He'll be watching me, and he'll be watching Julian. But he won't be watching you too, at least. Not if you give him something else to look at. Theodore grinned, a predatory spark in his eyes. You want play the Happy Power Cup, a public debut of the twin pillars of Apex Global finally united? Exactly, I said. If the two biggest rivals in the industry show up arm in arm, every head in that room will turn, including Silas's. While he's busy processing the shock of his two best Chaos agents being in love, Julian and I will move in for the signal clone. System notification, new quest. The Sapphire Stain. Objective, clone the signet ring. Reward, Silas's offshore ledgers. Warning, high-risk public display of affection overload. The transformation. The night of the gala arrived. The ballroom was a sea of shimmering silk and sharp tuxedos. I stood at the top of the grand staircase, Julian at my side. He looked devastating in a midnight blue velvet blazer. Are you nervous, Arthur? Julian asked softly. Julian, he's adjusting his cuffs again. He does that when he's overthinking. I want to take his hand, but we have to be the professional bosses for another hour. Once this is over, I'm taking him to that cabin in the woods and throwing his phone in the lake. A little, I admitted. But look, the show is about to start. The heavy oak doors opened, and a hush fell over the room. Sebastian and Theodore entered. If I hadn't known them, I would have thought they were the protagonists of a high-end romance novel. Sebastian was in a classic, perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his hair slicked back with a severity that made his cheekbones look like glass. Theodore, in a bold burgundy suit with no tie and a partially unbuttoned shirt, looked like his perfect, chaotic foil. They weren't walking together. They were synchronized. Theodore had his hand resting firmly on the small of Sebastian's back. Sensory link. Remote activation. Sebastian, everyone is staring. I should hate this. I should be calculating the social fallout. But Theodore's hand is so warm through the fabric of my suit. It feels grounding. I'm not playing a role. I'm just here with him. Theodore, look at them. Their jaws are hitting the floor. And Sebastian, God, he looks like a prince. My prince. I want to kiss him right here in front of the fountain just to see Silas's head explode. Steady, Theo. Keep the distraction going. Silas Pendleton, standing near the champagne tower, dropped his glass. The crystal shattered, but he didn't notice. He was staring at his two inside agents, or so he thought, who were currently looking at each other with a gaze that could melt lead. It's working, I whispered to Julian. Let's move. They weren't just walking together, they were synchronized. Theodore had his hand resting firmly on the small of Sebastian's back. Sensory link, remote activation. Sebastian, everyone is staring. I should hate this. I should be calculating the social fallout. But Theodore's hand is so warm through the fabric of my suit. It feels grounding. I'm not playing a role, I'm just here with him. Theodore, look at them. Their jaws are hitting the floor. And Sebastian, God, he looks like a prince. My prince. I want to kiss him right here in front of the fountain just to see Silas's head explode. Steady, Theo. Keep the distraction going. Silas Pendleton, standing near the champagne tower, dropped his glass. The crystal shattered, but he didn't notice. He was staring at his two inside agents, or so he thought, who were currently looking at each other with a gaze that could melt lead. It's working, I whispered to Julian. Let's move. The close encounter. While Sebastian and Theodore led Silas into a convoluted conversation about merged departmental synergies, Julian and I circled around the buffet. Julian held a specialized scanning device disguised as a vintage pocket watch. We needed to be within 2 feet of Silas's left hand for at least 10 seconds. Arthur, my favorite nephew, Silas's voice boomed as we approached. He large man with a fake, toothy smile and eyes like a vulture. And the loyal Julian, I see you finally managed to get your team leaders to stop trying to kill each other. Or is this just for the cameras? It's a new era for Apex, Uncle, I said, forced a smile. I stepped closer, gesturing toward the ballroom. They found they had more in common than they realized. As I spoke, Julian stepped to my left, accidentally bumping into Silas as a waiter passed by. Oh, my apologies, Mr. Pendleton, Julian said, his hand reaching out to steady Silas, specifically grabbing Silas's left wrist. System. Stability rating. 95%. Romance gauge. Breaking records. I think, I said, laughing breathlessly. It's time we went home and started the decryption. I agree, Julian said, his eyes dark and promising. But the decryption can wait until tomorrow morning. Tonight I have a different audit in mind. Chapter 9. The final audit and the new era. The morning after the gala didn't feel like the end of a war. It felt like the birth of a new world. The decryption of Silas's signet ring had been a slaughter. By 3 a.m. we had every bank account, every bribe, and every forged signature he had used to hollow out Apex Global in the previous timeline. I stood in the center of my office, watching the sunrise hit the skyscrapers of the city. Behind me was gathered. Sebastian and Theodore were sitting on the edge of the sofa. They weren't hiding it anymore. Theodore's arm was draped over Sebastian's shoulders, and Sebastian, the man who once considered a wrinkled shirt a personal failure, was leaning into him, his head resting against Theodore's chest. Julian, my right hand, as he always had and always would. It's over, I said, sliding the final digital arrest warrant into the public prosecutor's queue with a single tap. Police are at Silas's estate now. Lyra has already provided the testimony about his recommendation letters. He's finished. System notification, main quest complete. Result, company saved. Fatal turret. Final stability rating, 100%. The unexpected truth. Theodore stood up, stretching his arms. So, boss, now that we've saved the company and became friends, as you put it, what happens to the friendship initiative? I looked at them. Sebastian stood up too, adjusting his cuffs, though he didn't pull away from Theodore's side. I wanted you two to be friends, so you wouldn't fight over a girl and quit. I admitted, feeling a flush of embarrassment. I thought if you were a united front, the company would be safe. I never expected, well, this. Arthur, Sebastian said, his voice unusually gentle. We didn't become friends because of your little office merger. We became this because we stopped fighting the fact that we were already obsessed with each other. You just gave us a room with a locked door. Theodore grinned, pulling Sebastian closer by the waist. Actually, I think the United Front policy is working great. We're never quitting. In fact, we're demanding a raise for emotional labor. I laughed. A genuine deep sound that I hadn't made in 2 lifetimes. Request denied. But you can take the week off. Go to the Maldives. Or a library. Wherever you two synergize best. Theodore. Maldives. Definitely the Maldives. I want to see Sebastian in a swimsuit. Or out of one. Actually, I just want to see him happy. Sebastian. A week without spreadsheets. Just him. I suppose I can handle that. I might even let him hum that off-key song again. As they walked out, bickering affectionately about which airline had better legroom, the blue system screen began to flicker and fade. User, Arthur Pendleton. Epilogue triggered. The mastermind's reward. The boss's reward. The office went quiet. The floating screens vanished. The sensory links faded. And for the first time since my reincarnation, I couldn't hear anyone's thoughts. The silence was terrifying yet beautiful. They're gone, I whispered. Indeed, Julian said. He hadn't moved. He was still standing exactly where he belonged. I turned to him. Julian, I can't hear your thoughts anymore. The system, it's gone. I don't know what you're thinking. He took my hands in his grip firm and grounding. Without the screen, I can still see what he wants. You don't need a system to know how I feel. Arthur, Julian, his voice a low, steady hum. I've stayed by your side through bankruptcy, through death, and through your bizarre attempts at matchmaking. I don't stay for the salary. Then why do you stay? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Julian leaned down, pressing his forehead against mine. Because I'm the only one who truly knows the man behind the boss's mask. And I happen to be very, very fond of him. He kissed me, not a frantic hallway kiss or a calculated balcony kiss, but a slow, quiet promise of a future that wasn't written in a script. I realized then that I hadn't been sent back just to save a company. I had been sent back to realize that while I was trying to manage everyone else's happiness, I was the one who was truly loved. The twin pillars were happy. The villain was in a cell. And the boss was finally off the clock. Epilogue. 1 year later. Sebastian and Theodore had recently moved into a penthouse together, and surprisingly, the company hadn't down. The most significant change, however, is the atmosphere. The twin pillars no longer look for reasons to quit or ways to outdo each other. When the workday ends, Theodore's hand perpetually resting on the small of Sebastian's back or hooked into his belt loop. They've traded their bitter rivalry for a partnership that is the bedrock of the company. Sebastian still pretends to hate Theodore's singing, and Theodore still pretends to find Sebastian's rules boring, but the way they look at each other across the boardroom tells a different story. They didn't save the company. Found the only person in the world who could keep up with them. Lyra had become a top-tier project manager, proving she was more than just a plot device. And as for me, I was currently sitting on a beach watching the sunset. Arthur, Julian called out from the patio of our cottage. The wine is chilled, and the reports for next quarter just arrived. I looked at the stack of papers in his hand, then at the man I loved. Throw the reports in the ocean. Julian, I laughed. We're only auditing the stars. Julian smiled, his glasses catching the light. As you wish, sir.